Welcome to Should I Read It? Should I Read It is a weekly podcast that takes a deep dive into books. I'll provide a summary of the book and tell you how the ideas in the book relate across all the books we've covered so far. Welcome to episode 25 of Should I Read It? Today we're going to look at the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Now, this book is one of the business books that you'll hear over and over again. You must read. I'm going to tell you right up front, I am not everyone. There are some worthwhile bits, but so much terrible padding that I'm going to tell you not to read the book. So don't read the book. Look here, read the blog post that goes with this audio, listen to it, and save yourself the eye pain because you're going to roll your eyes so hard at every little nuanced story he's going to tell throughout the whole book. One of the things that gets more and more on your nerves as you read the book is all the stories that Covey is going to use. He uses them as illustrations of his habits. And they're almost always a little contrived and laughable, in fact. In one, he talks to his kids about internalizing the habits. And they willingly say, okay, there's no fighting, and he never has to talk to them about it again. Now, I got kids. Right now, they're 7, 4, and 2. And that's just not how it works. Kids argue, and they fight, and you have the same discussion with them over and over and over. The second thing that gets progressively worse in the book is buzzword bingo. The last short chapter is so bad that I read it 3 times, and my only note from it is I have no idea what this is about. That's a single read, and then a second one because I didn't know what it was about, and then a third one, I have no idea what the point he was trying to make is that last final chapter. But boy, man, you would have won buzzword bingo there. So don't read the book, but there are some great ideas in it. I can see why this was a revolutionary book when it came out. It just doesn't hold up well against so many of the other, again, heavily padded business books that are out there. Now, let's dig into what Covey says, and we're going to skip some of the buzzwords and a lot of these stories. Now, before he dives into the foundation of the book, Covey talks about the importance of habits. Here's a quote from him. Habits are powerful factors in our lives because they are consistent, often unconscious patterns. They constantly, daily express our character and produce our effectiveness or ineffectiveness. If you've ever tried to break a habit, you know the power it can have over you. We need to be very careful with the habits that we let get into our lives. In fact, more than just trying to be productive, in air quotes there, I rely on habits and routine to all but guarantee that my day will be an effective one. I shape my path to make sure that it goes well. And you'll notice Shape Your Path comes from Switch by Chip and Dan Heath, and there'll be a link to that in the show notes as well. Now, there's a key concept as well that you need to understand that pervades Covey's whole book. Now, it's called PPC balance. He's going to come back to this a few times in an effort to show that his 7 habits are effective. Here's a quote from him explaining it. Effectiveness lies in the balance, what I call PPC balance. P stands for production or desired results, the golden eggs. PC stands for production capacity, the ability or asset that produces the golden eggs. P would be all the work that you get done. If you pull a bunch of all-night work sessions, you've got a bunch done, but you're going to pay the price for it because your PC, your production capacity, is gone. You'll need days of rest to get back to effective production capacity. Did you get all that much more productive work done then in the long run? Probably not. Here's another quote from the book. There are organizations that talk a lot about the customer and then completely neglect the people that deal with the customer, the employees. The PC principle is to always treat your employees exactly as you want them to treat your best customer. The 7 habits focus right on developing your PC, knowing that production will follow from having taken care of your production capacity. Clearly, since the book is called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, there are 7 habits that Covey thinks you must develop. They are 1, be proactive. 2, begin with the end in mind. 3, put first things first. 4, think win-win. 5, seek to understand, then be understood. 6, synergize. There's one of our buzzwords there. And 7, sharpen the saw. Let's dig a little bit through each one. And we'll start with be proactive. And we'll start with that and a quote. While the word proactively is now fairly common in management literature, it is a word you won't find in most dictionaries. It means more than merely taking initiative. It means that as human beings, we are responsible for our own lives. Our behavior is a function of our decisions, not our conditions. We can subordinate feelings to values. We have initiative and responsibility to make things happen. So being proactive is you planning your tasks the night before and focusing on the items that you know have the highest potential to move your business forward. It's asking yourself, what is the single thing I can do that will make the rest of my work easier or irrelevant? If you want to get more work done, plan ahead so that you don't get derailed by the, in air quotes, important things that want to jump up and steal your attention. Tim Urban would often refer to these interruptions as the instant gratification monkey. There's a link to his article in the show notes. We get a reward from jumping on an email. That dump of happy brain chemicals rewards us for not planning ahead and then working on email instead. It's only at the end of the day that we sit back and feel a general lack of progress and disappointment in our day that we realize our day was crap. Future you has very little influence on you currently. Future you just has to deal with the crap you left them. Here's another quote from Covey. Many people wait for something to happen or someone to take care of them. But people who end up with good jobs are the proactive ones, who are solutions to problems, not problems themselves, who seize the initiative to do whatever is necessary, consistent with correct principles to get the job done. If you want something awesome to happen to you, then it's time to get in the driver's seat and start making sure that you're focused on the right work where you must bring value. There's no one to blame for your crappy day of tasks but yourself. If you're blaming someone else or something else, stop being a child. Adults take responsibility. Here's another quote from Covey. It's so much easier to blame other people, conditioning, or conditions for our own stagnant situation, but we are responsible to control our lives and to powerfully influence our circumstances by working on what we are. Being proactive means that you take responsibility for your actions, or for your lack of actions. You know the results rest squarely on the activity you took, and if you want different results, only different action on your part can make that happen. Now we're into habit 2. Begin with the end in mind. So we're going to insert the old and getting even lamer by the minute story about looking at yourself as a funeral and what will people say about you. Somehow Covey takes this story to a new level of eye rolling, and I'm not sure how because I actually generally like the analogy. But anyway, here's a quote from him. To begin with the end in mind means to start with a clear understanding of your destination. It means to know where you're going so that you can better understand where you are now so the steps you take are always in the right direction. This is something I cover in my 8-week business bootcamp. We walk through a few different exercises that get at this idea because when you know where you want to go, you can filter all your current decisions through that lens. You can look at business activities and make sure that they are going to get you to the goal. If they're not, you drop it. I'm actually writing a book coming up called, tentatively, Finding Focus, that's all about this. It's about finding your focus, filtering it, making sure your time's on point, and then taking it through to execution and traction. So if you want to get that, sign up for the email list at curtismchale.ca/subscribe, and you'll be one of the first ones to be notified of that. Again, one of the key insights in this chapter is that you must take responsibility for your actions if you want to get your desired result. Covey seems to be focusing you on proactivity in this chapter. He wants you to write a multi-page mission statement. Not just a sentence, but he wants you to spend a day or so every year evaluating this thing, writing it, and then working on it over a number of hours. I do this type of thing when I start my new notebook every year, but somehow the way Covey explained the process made it seem like a terrible endeavor. Not sure how he did that because I've always enjoyed my 2 or 3 hours that I spend working on my plan. If you want to know how I do a plan, there's also a link to that in the show notes as well. Now we're on to habit 3, and let's start with a quote from Covey. But as we examine the endowment in the context of effective self-management, we realize it's usually not the dramatic, the visible, the once-in-a-lifetime, up-by-the-bootstraps effort that brings enduring success. Empowerment comes from learning how to use this great endowment in the decisions we make every day. This section lines up really well with the one thing, and you'll find a link to that in the show notes as well. While much of the media glorifies the flash in the pan and popular people, it's almost never the case for work that lasts. In fact, much of what we view as amazing work decades later was actually the result of long, arduous work, day in, day out. Ryan Holiday also echoes this in his book, Perennial Seller. You can find a link to the review of that in the show notes as well. Now, Covey also spends a bunch of this habit talking about how always going for more work means we break relationships. We can deal with people and emotions faster and expect to do an effective job. Here's a quote from him. The efficiency focus creates expectations that clash with the opportunities to develop rich relationships, to meet human needs, and to enjoy spontaneous moments on a daily basis. Now that means scheduling every minute of the day leaves no room for relationships. And I firmly believe that business success with relational failure still means you failed. Broken marriage as the price for a business win and some money is way too high a price to pay. Here's another quote from Covey. Many people seem to think that success in one area can compensate for failures in another area. But can it really? Perhaps it can for a limited time in some areas, but can success in your profession compensate for broken marriage, ruined health, or weakness in personal character? True effectiveness requires balance, and your tool needs to help you create and maintain it. You got to spend time on the right things. Those that are not just urgent, but they are essential. It's not crucial for me to finish my next book, Finding Focus. I have no deadline, but these books do more than just create some sales for me. They help frame my thinking and force me to dig even deeper into my thoughts so that I can wrestle them out in a coherent way. I'm a better thinker and business owner for writing. That's why they often fall into the single thing that I can do to make the rest of my business easy or irrelevant. With that covered, we're going to jump into Covey's public victory habits. And again, let's start out with a quote. You can't be successful with other people if you haven't paid the price of success with yourself. There's a tendency to want outside results of success without putting in the work first. I was talking to a friend a few weeks ago. He wants a great job with an awesome company. And what he has is a mediocre job with an okay company. The thing is, that is all he is currently ready for. He has a mediocre to crappy attitude. He's going to get average work then. You need to be in the right spot for those opportunities you long for, or you're just going to squander them. You're reading this, you're listening to this, so I can say fairly confidently that you're working on yourself, which means you might be ready to move on to these next habits. Habit 4 is think win-win. Now, this is where I feel like Covey went way off the deep end regarding buzzwords, and that things just don't seem to mean anything, specifically in his explanation of the 6 paradigms of human interaction. Here's what they are. 1, win-win. 2, win-lose. 3, lose-win. 4, lose-lose. 5, win. 6, win-win or no deal. This was the first section that I read through once and then twice, and I just gave up on it. The reasoning between the different options is so convoluted that I felt I understood them better from that list above that I just gave you. His explanations made it worse. Now, I, like Covey, firmly believe in the last category, win-win or no deal. That's what all of consulting is. You find something that you can do that provides value to the client, and then they pay you for that value. You both win. If you can't figure out a way that you both win, you shouldn't be doing the work. Covey uses way too many contrived stories and buzzwords to say that in the one paragraph I just used though. Now, habit 5, seek first to understand, then be understood. Let's jump in with a quote. We have such a tendency to rush in to fix things up with good advice, but we often fail to take the time to diagnose, to really deeply understand the problem first. Many freelancers start here. They say yes to everything. They can fix any problem under the sun, and they don't even bother to figure out if it's really the problem that will change the prospects of their business. They see some complaint from a user, from a prospect, and they say, yeah, totally, I can do that work. But just like a doctor that prescribed a medication before doing any diagnosis would be considered malpractice, I believe that not diagnosing the problems with your clients and offering them paid options is malpractice as well. It also makes you worth so little that you get to race to the bottom pricing, because you're never the expert. Deeper than that, though, listening is one of the best ways to build up relationships. Listening and empathizing is one of the key ideas in No Drama Discipline, which is a great parenting book. I have a link to my review of that in the show notes. That book not only changed the interactions in my house, but it changed how I speak to clients as well. Here's another quote from Covey. Most people don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. They're either speaking or preparing to speak. Now, I'm really trying to stop waiting for my turn to speak. I have a post-it note on my monitor most times that says, talk less, ask more questions. In fact, the first time I started to try this idea was when I watched Fight Club years ago, when they say essentially the same thing. Everyone's just waiting for their turn to speak. As a freelancer, clients can tell when you're just saying yes to everything that you probably don't have the chops to work for. There's another quote from Covey. If you don't have the confidence in the diagnosis, you don't have confidence in the prescription. When you jump straight into pricing work without digging in, you're telling them that you're worth very little. One of the reasons that I have a really high rates is that my conversation focuses 90% on diagnosing to the extent that a number of prospects come to me for a membership site or web work, and they do business coaching first to make sure that they're even on the right track. Habit 6, synergize. Wonderful buzzword. Here's a quote from Covey. What is synergy? Simply defined, it means that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It means that the relationship which the parts have to each other is a part in and of itself. Not only a part, but the most catalytic, most empowering, most unifying, and most exciting part. Yeah, I got no idea what's going on up here. The sentence above is the best I've got, and I'm not convinced it says this is really much of anything. What I guess Covey is trying to say is that if you perform the other habits, they'll continue to compound on themselves, and you'll synergize your way into exponential success. I'm kind of grasping there, though. So habit 7, sharpen the saw. This is the final habit, but I argue that's actually the most important. It's the one that tells you to take care of yourself and talks about some ways to do it, because if you don't, you'll burn out. You're going to end up with doing crappy work. According to Covey, there are 4 areas you need to take care of. First is physical. That's sleeping right, eating right, getting exercise. 2 is spiritual. This is meditation or prayer and sticking with the values that are matched to who you are or to your whole being. If you don't do this, you're going to rebel. Number 3 is mental. There's a quote from Covey on this. Most of our mental development and study discipline comes through formal education. But as soon as we leave the external discipline of school, many of us let our minds atrophy. We don't do any more serious reading. We don't write, at least not critically or in a way that tests our ability to express ourselves in distilled, clear, and concise language. Instead, we spend time watching TV. So start reading books and start doing courses. Make sure that your brain is getting exercise just like any other muscle. 4 is social emotional. You must build up the relationships that are around if you want to thrive. You see this in a book called The Happiness Advantage, which I reviewed, and you'll find a link to that in the show notes. Those that have strong social support in that book are the best to get through the hard times. Taking care of yourself is crucial to being around for the long term. No one should be impressed that you pulled an all-nighter. Keep yourself in tip-top shape to make sure that you can do good work over the long haul. Now, we're on our last chapter. And this is the one that brought out the buzzword bingo to me. It's called Inside and Out Again. I have no idea what it's about. I read it 3 times, and that's all I'm going to say about that. This episode of Should I Read It is brought to you by the 8-Week Business Bootcamp. If you're tired of struggling with your business, tired of not getting the traction you want, tired of working overtime with little to show for it, then Bootcamp is for you. Join me to get your business back on track and still have time to see your family. You'll find a link for Bootcamp in the show notes. So, our final question is always, should you read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? You probably got this at the beginning. Don't bother reading it. It's got some good ideas, but they're so wrapped up on buzzwords and totally improbable examples that it devalues the entire book. I had to force myself to stop skimming the book and to truly focus so I could write this review and do this podcast. Thanks for listening to Should I Read It? To support the show, you can leave me a review in iTunes or a heart or a star in whatever podcast player you use. These help more people find the show. If you want to get more reading done, you should get an Audible membership. If you use curtismchale.ca/recommends/audible, that will help the production of the show financially. In episode 26, we're going to look at an older book as well, so that we can learn what it takes to win friends and influence people.